Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jagdeep Ahluwalia. I am the founding secretary of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, which I currently serve as executive director. We are a 21-year-old organization, and I would like to introduce my board. Our executive team led by the chairman of our board and President Tarush Anand, who sends you his greetings, our directors at large, and our very distinguished advisors. Today's event is hosted by the Nexgen. I'll be introducing the Nexgen committee in a minute. I do want to thank the Nexgen for bringing a very distinguished speaker, Landy Spearman, who is very well recognized in the diversity community across the country. We are privileged to have her join us today and give us 90 minutes of her time. I also want to bring to your attention two important upcoming events. The first one is with the previous ambassador to India, Ambassador Richard Verma, who, when he was our sitting ambassador in Delhi, agreed to fly down to Houston to be the keynote speaker at our gala. And he was one of our most distinguished and most entertaining speakers. And we are privileged to have him back with us on the 25th in a virtual meeting with us, a power dialogue. And everybody who's logged in today is welcome to visit our website. Bhavna will send you the link to log in. You do need to be logged in to attend the event. Another very important event is on August the 31st. I keep getting the date wrong. I keep saying 30th, which is a Sunday, exactly August the 31st. It's our Women Mean Business event. It is sponsored by Shell, and our media sponsor for the event is the Houston Business Journal. And we are featuring two very prominent women, Malisha Patel and Alicia, who will be talking about their experience of being a woman during the age of COVID. It'll be a very interesting dialogue, and I encourage you all to log in and attend. Again, you need to log in to attend these events. I would now like to introduce the Nexgen committee. I first want to thank our community partners. And we are proud of our community partners because they help us work with the community and get the message out. I also want to recognize our media partners who help make our events available across channels, whether it is radio or the print media or television, to the community at large. Today's event will be recorded. We will shut down the recording during the breakout rooms so that you can have an honest conversation without being recorded. But before and after that, we will be recording the event and sharing it with our database. We will be putting it on our website, and we will be emailing it to today's attendees. It's now my honor and privilege to bring into focus the Nexgen committee. The Nexgen is the future of the chamber. These are today's leaders who will continue to lead and grow in the community. The Nexgen committee has been actively involved with the chamber over the past few years. And the chair of the committee, Anish Nagar, and the co-chair, Bhag Singh, have worked very, very actively to make sure we bring the right kind of content to the chamber and to our community. I will introduce Anish and then hand over the program to him. Anish Nagar is an impact-focused technologist, investor, and young civic leader based in Houston. As the CEO of Core Centra, he increases organizations' social and operational impact by leveraging data and analytics. It's my privilege to hand over to Anish Nagar, who from this point on will, with the help of Dilbag, move the event forward. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jagdeep Ji. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. We have a very awesome speaker and event set up this evening. As Mr. Ahluwalia mentioned, my name is Anish Nagar, and I am the chairman of Nexgen Exchange. A quick bit about our organization. We're the young professional arm of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and our goal is to leverage the Chamber's experience network to help young professionals and entrepreneurs here within our community. And we do this through hosting a number of events as well as pitch competitions. And today I'm very excited to have Landy Spearman lead our discussion on allyship and inclusion. Before getting started, tonight's event will be broken into 3 sections: a presentation, a 15-minute breakout, and then concluding with a Q&A portion. A little bit of housekeeping. I'd like to ask all the attendees to please stay on mute up until the breakout session. This will help avoid any sort of interruptions during Landy's presentation. But during the breakout session, I encourage everyone to go off mute and engage in the discussion. Now, I would like to introduce Landy Spearman with a little bit of her background. Landy is the CEO of Landy & Co. and the founder of the change, leadership, and management consulting firm Organized Shift. She's helped develop over 1,000 leaders, and over the last 20 years, she's had the opportunity to influence cultural change by working with a lot of Fortune 500 companies. I've also had the opportunity to work with Landy multiple times and collaborate multiple times over the last few years, and I'm very, very excited to do it once more tonight. That being said, Landy, I will hand the mic and event over to you.
Good evening, hello. I just want to do a thumbs up that everyone can hear me clearly. Perfect. Okay, so wow, that was a pretty big introduction. And I definitely, I'm excited to be here. I also do recognize that the subject in the conversation is not one that we speak about every day or is necessarily top of mind, except when you're facing a pandemic, and you're also dealing with the reality of where we are as a country, where we are as a people, and maybe where you are, where, you know, where do I stand? And so I give to you a very interactive, engaging discussion. And I say this because I want to remind each and every one of us that I don't consider myself to be the expert and leader to know it all in any way, shape, or form. What I will do is I will share my experience, my training, my professionalism with you. I will also ask that we have a safe space to talk about our thoughts and our ideas. The reality of it is, this is, you know, allyship and inclusion. It can be a very, very sensitive subject and topic. And I tell you, don't let the pearls fool you. I am ready and willing to have this conversation with you. And I say that from a place of true, sincere, it's a privilege to be here and be with you. Anish contacted me, oh, it seems like forever ago. You may remember there was an incident back towards the end of May sometimes. You know, I've learned that COVID has extended our time, it seems. And so there was a period when George Floyd was killed, and we watched it and we chose and we decided to, you know, take a position and take a stand. And this was at a time when there was already so many things that were going on in our country. And so the conversation that he and I had was very real. And the one thing that I can say about Nexgen and the work that has been put into this presentation tonight, the team, oh my gosh, I have seen some of the faces that I am seeing here now. And I am honestly, again, proud and privileged to be here, because when we start to open the conversation and create the safe space for what we're really dealing with, it goes from it being an issue or a problem about others or about an organization or about a leader or about a group to a conversation between you and I. So thank you. I am going to share my screen now, and I'm going to ask for, again, a thumbs up. You can see that? Anish, perfect. Okay, so I just got news before I got on here, and I see that you all are proud supporters of the Houston Business Journal. I was just nominated as an honoree for Women Who Mean Business. And so you can hear my voice getting a bit emotional there. Why? Because when you think about the work that we do and being honored by an organization like the Houston Business Journal, it again just leans into the fact of what this organization right here is doing. So I thought I would share that with you because I hadn't even had time to add that to my bio. So let's jump into the presentation. We're good, we can see that? Okay, so allyship and inclusion. One of the things that is important for us to consider, and Anish, please let me know if I'm 5 minutes out, and then that way I can know we can wrap it up for the next part, and then we'll jump into a case study and do some work together. So when we talk about allyship, I can admit that this had not been a common or a popular word until recently, until the last few months. We've heard a bit about inclusion through probably diversity and inclusion. The way that I would like you to consider this conversation is, what does it cost? What does it cost us? What does it cost us to be closed-minded? What does it cost us to just look at things one way or not see from a different perspective? And what is the cost, no matter the title, what is the cost of the undeveloped leader? So Anisha has already done a great job of speaking a little bit about some of the things that I've done. This again is not in any way, shape, or form about me or accomplishments. This is to let you know that this again is a safe space to talk about some of the things that may have been on our mind or stirring, or what is your background? How are you the person? I've been asked sometimes to prove myself. And so I thought I would put this here just to kind of get that out of the way so that you know that I am here with you. I'm here with you as an entrepreneur from about 8 years old with family-owned businesses all the way through corporations, now as an entrepreneur. And as I said recently, to this Houston Business Journal honoree that I'm very excited about and looking forward to sharing that. Okay, so let's get into it. What is the cost of the undeveloped leader? You might have seen that name before. We're going to talk about leading agile, new diversity and inclusion. So I wanted to come up with an acronym, a way of helping you to think about diversity and inclusion, helping you to think about that undeveloped leader, because I'm going to be very honest, it can be you and I. It's not a time to point at someone else, but it's a time to see that, wow, our position or our perspective actually has something to do with our own development. And a lot of times we get to a place where we recognize, we may be either growing or we are comfortable, or we may want to work and improve. And so we're going to walk through leading agile, new diversity and inclusion, of course, for the 21st century workplace. Okay, so some of this may look familiar. Is anyone working the chat? I see Q&A. Anyone working the chat? If not, we can put it in the Q&A. What I would love for you all to do is let me know what you identify with in this visual. What stands out for you? First thing, first answer, what do you identify with? What makes sense to you? What are your thoughts? I'm clicking on Q&A. Okay, I'm not seeing audience tools. Anish, can you help me out here? I think you're on mute. Thank you.
Yeah, give me a second. Bhavna, sure. Do we have a Q&A enabled for folks to type in their questions?
And if not, no problem. I can keep going.
Let's just go ahead, Landy, if you don't mind, we can keep going. And then folks that have questions, just note them down, and then we can regroup and answer some of those during the Q&A portion of the event.
Thank you. So the reason for this slide, the visuals, whether or not you're a sports fan, you may recall when the Houston Astros won right after Hurricane Harvey, and we all kind of came together. I don't know about you, but every time I see this Houston inspired kind of this mural, I don't know, I feel good about it. I know that we are the energy capital of the world, and we stand strong on that. Even when the economy is not where it needs to be, and we stand strong on trying to figure it out together. You also see the medical center here, and then our ION, the Center for Innovation. We are becoming the next Center for Innovation. So this slide is a visual to help us to process and think through those things and times and events that we may come together, that we may sit next to each other or stand side by side willingly, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be in the stadium, whether it be during times where we're in the medical center with someone, our loved one, or whether when we're innovating or collaborating. Or the reality of it is there may be times that you never engage in any of these, but guess what? You're in Houston, so you're a part of a community. So L, that first letter, leading. So of course there are thousands literally of leadership books that are on the shelves, but when we think about leading, one of the things that I speak to is, again, what is the cost of the undeveloped leader? So what exactly is leading? So one of the definitions that are currently out there is leading means guidance or leadership. Guidance or leadership. So you'll notice it doesn't have a title on there. It doesn't say that this type of person is qualified to be a leader. And so one of the things that I do when I'm consulting clients is I help us to see that every single person, regardless of title, regardless of creed, regardless of where you are from, we are all leaders. I also will say that when we think about leading our forefathers here, right here in America, America, when it was designed originally was not necessarily designed, it was not at all designed to make everyone equal, to lead, to everyone to be a part of leading through what the American dream was. And so we've heard of, and we're very familiar with things called amendments to the Constitution. So even leaders sometimes have to change or shift, or their guidance or their leadership needs to change in the moment, in the face of a challenge or an environment. So just wanted to point that out. When we think about leaders, it's not number one, a one size fits all. It's not necessarily a specific qualifier, but leadership can also change. So it's important to be able to skill up. When you think about this word agile, so agile has often been used in technology. And so I am Lean Six Sigma certified. And all that means is that I think through quality, time, and cost on everything and improving that. The thing about the work that I do is actually I help teams and organizations to do that with people. So oftentimes, especially when we're leading, we forget that people are our biggest asset. And so when you're thinking through how to be agile, how to move quickly and easily, as a leader, when you're faced with something like what we all can identify and recognize here, if you were here during Harvey or you saw it on the news, leadership in the time of an unprecedented change or something that impacts us can also bring us together the same way that those communities that we saw brought us together when we are all being fans, sports fans. So agile is the ability to be able to move quickly and easily, agile. So when you think about an organization, when you think about your team, when you think about even your own mindset, remember I was going to help you to apply this to you. Agility applies to your own mindset. Are you fixed? Are you set? Do you not have a growth mindset like Carol Dweck when she's speaking in her book, The Growth Mindset? And if so, you're entitled to that. No judgment here. To your team, how does that affect your colleagues? How does it affect your family? It doesn't always have to be about business. And then on the bigger picture, how does that affect your community, society, the workplace? One of the things that I do know for sure is adversity drives agility. Adversity drives agility. Adversity drives change, and it also drives resilience. So one of the things that I'll tell you about the story here At the top right, you'll see my son and my husband. My son is a senior at Energy Institute. He is sure that he is going to be an architect and an engineer at the same time. He is, a Gen Z, and he thinks very differently, as many Gen Zs do, from the way that I think as a Generation Xer or even a millennial or even my boomers. Well, the one thing that I can tell you is that, as you can see in the picture behind them, I am a man. I am a man. I did not know in just less than a year ago for Thanksgiving that I would be in Alabama. I'm sorry, not Alabama, in Memphis, Tennessee, for Thanksgiving with my family. I met them. I'm originally from Chicago, and Memphis, Tennessee is kind of like a halfway place. If we're driving, I can drive from Houston and they can meet us there. So we spent the holiday there together. But when we left, I took my children, my husband and I took our children to go visit the Lorraine Motel. So you may have heard of the Lorraine Motel as the place where Dr. Martin Luther King was shot. And so what you're seeing here is a mural just a couple blocks away from where he was actually shot. And as I said, I never in a million days would have thought of the fact that this picture here, this mural where people that I love, two Black men, are standing in front of a mural saying that I am a man. And then I'm also seeing this picture of George Floyd right here in the city of Houston, who was from here. So the point there, when we talk about adversity, as you can see in the picture behind my husband and son, or as you can see even in the picture of Third Ward, we have Fifth Ward and then we have Third Ward. Adversity, people coming together because there is something wrong, there is problems, we're angry, we're frustrated, things haven't been shared. Adversity can drive change. It can drive that ability to move quickly and easily. The reality is, when we're dealing with people, the easily part is not so easy. And that's where you have to have resilience. That's where that actually comes in, resilience in your workplace. So let's see, I'm just checking my notes. One of the things that I was thinking about was how do you learn more? How do you know more about others? When people are frustrated, what we've seen, and these may be questions that you have, when you're frustrated or you're seeing people speak to Black Lives Matter, how does that make you feel thinking through that? Do you know why people are angry? Do you know why people feel the way they feel? Do you know why there is history that hasn't been shared, and there's systemic issues and problems and racism that has not been addressed? And so my question when I'm asking, do you know why? Putting yourself in someone else's shoes, having empathy is a skill that is developed. Remember that underlying question: what is the cost of the undeveloped leader? So not having empathy, not allowing yourself to be put in someone else's shoes, not being willing or open to, you don't have to agree, but do you know? Okay, the N was for new. So new, we know this word, new, not existing before. I also want you to think about new in terms of new change, something when it needs change. New can be something that your needs change. You have new needs. Why? Based on your experience, based on your new reality, your needs change. So over time, I talked about the Constitution, for example. Over time, needs change. Your own experience might say, you know what was serving me last week is not actually serving me anymore. Or what I did in my 20s doesn't serve me now that I'm 50. Or my reality has changed. I have children now. I'm married now. I'm in a different position now. I've moved up in my title in my career now. So when our needs change, there is something new. How do you adjust to the new? Networks. Networks include collaboration. So when I was thinking through solutions, one of the solutions that I would offer is collaboration. It's things like this right here. The reality is creating the safe space to talk about what we're dealing with and choosing to collaborate opens up for new, something that did not exist before. And diversity of thought, think about it from this perspective. When we normally think about diversity, we think about race and gender. I would ask you to consider diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and diversity of perspective are all ways that you can bring and broaden your network. Bring in other people, broaden your network. Collaborate, broaden your network. What is the value and the benefit is what I'm going to ask you. I want you to be thinking about that for yourself. What could be the value or the benefit of collaborating? The value or the benefit of having that diversity of thought, because someone who's sitting next to you may have a different perspective. And then right here, we're seeing this on this call, the reason for us coming together today. The next generation, new can be the incoming ideas, thoughts of a whole new generation. And in the workforce, whether we want it or not, in the next 5 years, by 2025, our workforce will consist of 76% millennials, 76%. And so when you think about new, not existing before, in the past, our workforces have been very different. They have been very male-dominated at the top, white male-dominated specifically. And now when you say 76% of the workforce is shifting, we're already seeing about half of that. We're halfway there. What you are experiencing are a new generation who's coming in to say, yes, we're not okay with keeping things the same. So what I would ask you as a leader, what is the cost of you staying the same? When we think about the future of work, what is the cost for you to stay exactly where you are? As we know, things are going to continue to shift and to change. So I want you to think about that for you. What is the cost of your team staying the same? If things were one way February 2020, which I call BC, before Corona, how are they different now? What is the cost of you staying the same? Have things really changed for you? So this new generation where social impact matters, conversations like, hey, what's going on with George Floyd and the community and the Black Lives Matters movement that has been created as a result of that. Those are not questions that we all have to answer and ask for. And that's exactly the reason why I said I'm honored to be here tonight. Okay, I spoke a little bit about this. I was looking at some of the data. I said I'm not going to put up new numbers. I just wanted to show how we hit that peak in June, at the end of June. As you can see, we got all these new cases very specific to Houston. And then one of the other things here, the downtown parking transactions, I thought that would be an interesting statistic just to show back in February, look at where we were. We were average and then we dropped all the way off. So when we think about impact of COVID, things like even the parking system, it's not just our financial impact, economically, it's how we think, it's our mental well-being, it's our sense of belongingness, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's thinking through, how do I feel? Is my psychological state, am I safe? We actually are experiencing stages of grief as a result of going through the cycle that we're experiencing collectively. Remember, adversity increases our agility. So we're having to shift and change very quickly because of what is happening, the impact. Okay, so the D was for diversity. I know there's a lot of words on this slide, and I've already spoken to diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and diversity of perspective. And the reason why I'm showing you this slide is because when I think through, okay, I'm looking to help leaders, what does that look like? What I also must do is I must lean into what's uncomfortable. So I've literally, within the last just 5 years, there wasn't enough room on the page. I'm sharing with you some of the things that I've done to connect, to lean into, to develop myself so that I can open up my diversity of thought, so that I can improve and impact my experience. And I can change and shift my perspective. Why? Because I tell you, when I was sitting in the data science program, and I was sitting next to folks who could code in Python and could use visualization to really tell the story. And now are some of the thought leaders who are sharing information regarding our statistics with COVID without having a STEM background. I tell you, I brought in my perspective. When I think through the University, of Houston, the SURE program. The SURE program brought me alongside other entrepreneurs from all over the city. Why, you might ask, why would I do something like this? Why would I already know where I am. I've done well, I'm successful, or I'm happy with who I am. So as I said, when you think about diversity, in addition to race and gender, consider diversity of thought, diversity of experience, and diversity of perspective. And what are some of the ways that you can connect and collaborate with others? What are some of the ways that you can stretch yourself? And think about that. How much more developed are you? How much more of a teammate and collaborator are you when you express yourself differently because you've expressed yourself in a way that you may have never thought before, now that you have these experiences? So those experiences have led me to this. So these are some visuals instead of all the words. Now I'm having conversations about digital information and technology. The one here on the bottom left is a group. There was a 2-day group where I led here in the center all of these new, young, emerging leaders to help them to see innovation, that they are indeed innovation. Innovation is not outside of you. Innovation is not your cell phone or a piece of technology. You are the innovator. We leverage technology. And so I was able to share that here through the Innovation Challenge. And these young people, I tell you, they just presented in a demo day a couple weeks ago, and they are solving some of the world's problems. It doesn't matter where you came from, what your background is, they are solving some of our biggest problems. What you see here in the middle is some of the ecosystem leaders and organizational leaders who have come together to say, you know what, we have different programs and different offerings from our organization. How can we come together to help our entrepreneurial community? How can we come together to help people of color? And so that was a presentation here that was facilitated. It was an entire day event. It was great with some of our leaders from the technology and, as I said, founders of color right here in Houston. The one here on the top left, becoming a speaker. That was something that, I know how to speak. We all know how to speak, but I promise it takes something to speak at Texas A&M University to a room full of renewable energy folks. And that was an amazing experience. But why am I showing you this? Because I'm showing you that when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at will change. I'm going to say that again. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. So all of the experiences, my diversity of thought, perspective, and experience changed the way that I saw myself and how I collaborated. And I don't know if you can see that on this picture, but there are not a lot of people who look like me. And so being able to be open and stand strong and be a part of the solution in renewable energy is because I brought a diversity of perspective. And then here, this one on the top right was just recent for the Greater Houston Partnership. I was one of the coaches that help people to pivot and think through how do they shift during this time. So I challenge you to think through, what does your circle look like? Does everyone look the same? Is everyone like you? You showed up here today. You showed up here today. So you showed up here maybe thinking that this would just be, another program or another call or something else that you've heard about before or maybe touched upon. But I encourage you to lean into who you are, because you showing up matters and it means something. It's you stretching yourself. So diversity and inclusion, we've seen some of these collaborative words, community, multi-generational, interfaith, compassion, leadership, disability, perspective, advocacy, sexual orientation, empowerment, representation, equity, opportunity. The list goes on. And the last one, the I, inclusion. The action or state of being included within a group or a structure. So I want you all to go back, maybe even close your eyes for a second. Go back and think of, was it the high school dance? Was the last time maybe you attended a dance, or was it something recently where, you were at a gala or an event and there was a dance, there was a point in time where you were invited. So if you think about diversity and inclusion, you can think about being invited to the dance. So diversity would be the invitation. You're in the room, you have access. So when I ask you to consider your circle and look at expanding that circle, I challenge you to include, take the next step. Don't just invite people to the table, include them in the conversation. So at that dance, being included would be not just even being asked to dance, but also consider to you being asked your opinion of the song. What song do you want to play? So invitation to the dance, being asked to dance, get out on the dance floor, and then what song do you want to play? That's inclusion. And you can see here, we've evolved. We're now at a digital age. So we have the capacity to be more inclusive actually than less. It may feel like it because we're not meeting in person and touching, but think about this. You all are all able to log on. There were, I think, 30 plus or 40 participants the last time that I looked at this. And so because of the digital age, we have the opportunities, even when we're interviewing, when we're hiring, when we're hosting events, we can open it out. Why? Because we're at a time of digital exploration and innovation. Lastly, allyship. So why would allyship be important? So when you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, the way that I would like you to consider allyship is to start with you. Why is this important to you? Why does it matter? Why would diversity, equity, or inclusion matter? Then allyship in your career. On the last slide, I talked a little bit about it being the digital age, and you saw visuals of collaborations with people. How could allyship, you connecting with someone who thinks differently, who looks different from you, who has a different perspective, how could that impact you? How could you become an ally? Why is that important? What about your industry? What about your industry? Is it slow to change? I know one of the challenges when I'm consulting clients or even coaching at one-on-one behind closed doors is the industry mindset that we have. Well, it's always been like this. And what I can tell you is what got you here is not the same thing that's going to get you there. Because again, millennials are here to stay. Technology is not going anywhere. And we are facing times that are very different because of the fact that we are being stretched, because of the fact that technology is here and is here to stay. And so we are more, our exposure, VUCA is another session that I do where we talk about the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity of change is happening so fast and so rapidly that it's causing us to change in our careers. It's causing us to change in our industry. It's almost like we're being forced to do it. So instead of being forced, when I say start with yourself, how can you open up your mind and change? You be the change that you want to see in the industry. You be the change that you want to see in your community. Allyship is a lifelong process. It's a process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, and accountability with marginalized individuals and groups of people. That's what it is, a lifelong process. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It takes time. It takes you unlearning some of the things or even becoming aware of where you stand. It takes you being invited to the dance and then going beyond the invitation to actually being asked to dance. It takes you going beyond that to having the courage to have the conversation and say, hey, I want to choose the music. That's what allyship is. It's reaching across and building the relationship based on trust, accountability, consistency. If you see something that you don't like, say something. We're ready for our case studies, Anish.
Awesome, very cool. So folks, we're gonna go ahead and break into 3 breakout sections, and we'll have Landy and 2 of our other board members of Nexgen Exchange lead the discussions. So Bhavna, whenever, before, breaking into the breakouts, Landy, do you just want to do a quick high level of the case study, and then we can go ahead and break out into the individual groups?
Sure. So I've given you a lot of information. Thank you for being fully present and engaging in the conversation, considering this for yourself. What this is, if you remember business school, or if you remember figuring out how to solve the problem, a hackathon, anything like that, this is a shorter version of that. What we're doing is we're just going to read the case, we're going to review the questions, and we're going to have a discussion at the end about some of the things that this team is facing, and helping you to see and apply some of the things that you've learned today about leading agile, new diversity and inclusion. See if you can apply those thoughts so that we can actually make sure that you have value to walk away with being able to apply this on your job, or you're in your business, or in your everyday life tomorrow. Okay, so in the first, it's actually the same scenario, it's just kind of 2 different points of time. So there's a client meeting, you have a manager by the name of Jim, and Jim is turning to Tanya and he's saying, I'm thinking that there are a lot of points today that are going to be covered. Can you take notes again? And he's complimenting her by saying, you did a great job last time. Tanya has agreed. Jim is her manager, and she gets out her laptop and she takes the notes. But during the presentation, the client asks a question directly to Tanya, but Michael jumps in, which is one of her colleagues, and starts showing other slides that may not answer the client's question. As this meeting wraps up, Jim, the manager, tells Tanya to share her notes with the team and the client so that they can have the next steps discussed. Then the next day, Jim, Tony, and Michael are scheduled to meet with their new colleagues in their office in India. And the 2 people from their office in India are introducing themselves, and Tanya actually asked them to pronounce their names again, or if they would like to go by a nickname, by Sid or Ani. And Ani Ruth pronounced her name again, but much slower. And Jim, the manager, jokingly says to Tanya and to Michael, if you can please pronounce, I can't pronounce that last name. Yes, if you can pronounce, and it's Tanya's last name, then they can pronounce their teammates' names too. He's joking with her saying that. The team continues to talk about the timeline for their next market research project and decide that it's been a productive start. So we're taking that information and first starting with, can anyone relate to the situation? And if so, how so? I went through that fast. Was that helpful, Anish?
Yes, I think that was. And again, we'll review these during the breakout session, excuse me. So Bhavna, let's go ahead and break everyone out into their respective sections. And again, for all the attendees, this is going to be a good opportunity for y'all to engage, ask questions. We're going to have Anasuya, Landy, and Dilbag Singh leading each of the sections. So Bhavna, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and set up the breakouts.
And I would ask, please, you all, this is you leaning in. This is you showing up and leaning in and putting to use. People, we want to hear your perspective. So feel free to turn your cameras on, take yourselves off mute, and let's engage.
Hi, everyone. Can y'all hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. My name is Anasuya Kabat. I'm also one of the team members for the Nexgen group. And so I hope you guys had a really interesting discussion and got to kind of hear things from different people's perspectives. That was really kind of the purpose of this exercise. And so what I'll do is, we do have some time, so we'll just kind of open it up now to questions. If anybody has questions for Landy, we can see about unmuting you, and I think I can do that. Maybe not. We can, maybe if you can just raise your hand through the reactions queue, and then we can unmute you, and feel free to share your questions with Landy.
Okay, I'll get it started then. So Landy, one of the things that we were really discussing around was for diversity and inclusion, where should this change come from, whether it is top down or from bottom up? And I mean, we all agreed that it's both, right? If there is structure and managers are aware of a lot of this, then they should be creating this culture and creating this safe space for everyone to be able to share their ideas and feel inclusive. Whereas if there is an organization that doesn't really have that in place, then maybe it's our job to bring that about, discuss with them, say, hey guys, we really have great ideas to share. Unfortunately, we don't have any way of doing that. So I think we should put something in place.
So great point. I want to kind of peel the onion. And first of all, again, guys, it's late in the day. It's 7 o'clock on a Tuesday. We're just getting the week started. And I'm serious. I'm deeply moved because even in our breakout, we discussed we are the change that we want to see. Like, you get to show up. So to answer your question, we talked about titles and being the leader. Yes, it is top down and bottom up. It is both and. It is not or. And the reality is, oftentimes, if you think about if you've ever been convinced of something, how much easier is it when when you're convinced through influence versus through power? Hey, I'm telling you to do this, I'm your boss, and you need to do it, versus I am a part of the conversation, I get to engage and choose and decide. Those are two different scenarios. And I say that, this cliche, I don't know if you all have ever heard of this before, people leave people, not companies. People leave people. So if your boss is open and willing, and you may even remember your favorite teacher, right? Your favorite teacher, was it third grade or fourth grade? Now relate that to the opposite, not your favorite, not your, the teacher, you don't have to name names, but think about the boss who just, like, you couldn't wait to get out of there every day, or you did not like working with that person. People leave people, not companies. So when we talk through the cost of that undeveloped leader, the cost of that leader could cost everything for the team, because we're less productive, we're not performing at our best, we're not showing up with the morale that we need to come together as a team. And so on both sides, it needs to definitely come from the leader, but it also needs to come from each and every one of us. If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Anasuya, just so you know, we did not get a chance to do the poll. I don't think the function was working, but we were able to break out into our sessions. I see some of my people who are in the room. Thank you.
Hey. There we go. Well, if y'all don't mind filling that out real fast, that will be helpful. It's multiple choice, so you can choose all that apply to you.
So the questions here for anybody who's calling in, so you know what the poll says. It says, what would you like to learn from this event? Check all that apply. And again, you can choose more than one. I want to know what diversity and inclusion means at a basic level. I want to know why diversity and inclusion is important in business. I want to know how I can encourage diversity and inclusion efforts in my own business or the company I work for. I want to be a better ally for underrepresented groups in my industry. I feel underrepresented in my industry and I'm looking for support. Please answer again as many as apply and hit submit right there, I believe at the bottom.
Hey, Landy, I actually have a question. It's the homework that you posed to us prior to the breakout session being pushed out here, but the little things that we can work on in order to provide or create that safe space. You know, I would love to have it's an open discussion on what can be done from someone that's middle of their career or beginning of their career. What can they do to start that conversation?
Sure. So I'm curious to know if anyone has any feedback. If so, you can unmute yourself, but I definitely want to share a couple. I see Deborah. Did you want to share something? No. Okay. So what can you do? What are some of those small things? So if in case you all didn't get to that question in your discussion, it was what are the small steps that we can take to encourage and create a space where all voices are heard and valued, literally the small steps. And we talked about the fact that allyship is this whole thing. Thank you, Thomas, for that question. This whole entire lift is not something that you should, one, do alone. And then number two, it is not a sprint, okay? So what are some of the small steps? This is a start, right? So we talked in our group, we talked about the fact that you can watch videos, you can read books, you could watch videos, read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can hear other people. The point to listen and learn with an open mind and be empathetic is a part of what's missing. So if you think about our current culture and how business runs, empathy, the soft skills. I used to be a human resource manager for Kraft and for GE. And so soft skills were not something that, those were the first thing that we cut. And the reality is, I spoke about technology, and the reason why it's so important is because technology is actually almost making us a little bit less human. So think about that. If you are on Facebook or you're on LinkedIn, I know a lot of us are on LinkedIn, you can click like, you can like a post, okay? You can dislike, you can comment, but you're actually not truly engaging. When you click like, you're clicking a button, you're not expressing a feeling. When you're watching a video, it's a one-sided communication. You're receiving information. This is an opportunity to engage. And yes, it's an uncomfortable conversation. The reality is showed up so you get to engage in conversation. So listening versus having your own set thoughts or perspective only, that can take away from the experience. Think about that. Think about the last time someone cut you off, spoke over you, didn't hear you. Look, whether it was your friend, your buddy, your spouse, your coworker, how did that make you feel? Now imagine being a marginalized group. Imagine being a Black person. Imagine being me. How do you think I would feel if I'm speaking, if I am Tanya and I am in that room and I'm not being heard? So the small step is you say something when you see something, listening, creating that safe space yourself. And it may even be, it doesn't have to be in the meeting where you're like, hey, you did something wrong, boss, or, don't ever do that again. It may be a conversation that you pull someone to the side. It may be writing an email. It may be taking a stand. It may be, we've seen demonstrations and marches, and so you can become a part of the solution. But part of it is learning and being connected to other people as well. So that's the start.
Yeah, Hernandez. I could also add, I love your example about being the allyship and the fact that it's not a sprint, but a marathon. But I think just affirming people is something that goes quite a long way. If you are the one who, let's say, in that room where this person has been marginalized or not validated in what they say, you could always be that person that goes back and says, you know what, I really like the idea. I think that there's some merit to what Jim said. And Jim, we'd like to hear a little bit more about that. Do you mind sharing more? And that helps to validate that person and affirms their position and their thoughts and brings them into the whole D-I-E equation of the team.
Well said, Jewel. Thank you. Thank you so very much. So affirming, that's key and critical, and that's a small thing, right? So in our small discussion, we spoke about even being a woman in IT from a long time and how things have changed over time. Well, we've made some progress, right? But the reality is it's taken someone to stand up and say, you know what, like you said, hey, Jewel wants to say something. Let's I think we didn't hear that point. Is there anything that you want to say? So you also see tonight, you've seen me model some of the habits that we can incorporate. You've seen me, even with the name for the case study, I say, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Creating that space to give yourself permission to say, I don't know how to pronounce that. Not being that because, you are the boss or you don't want to, quote, get it wrong. I said that in the very beginning of this, that, no one of us is the expert on all of this, not one of us. And so showing up, being a part of the conversation, the affirmation, creating the safe space. Again, these are all interpersonal skills. These are all human skills. It's being a human, right? But the reality is, there are so many things that we've made more of a priority and made more important that we've actually pulled away from that experience of developing our humanness. And hey, you know what? This person feels marginalized, and I'm going to stand with them because I think, I am a man. That's a real thing. They are as well. And so how are you doing that? Some of this is self-reflection. Some of this is true self-reflection. And kind of thinking, okay, so how do I do something different?
Landy, thank you so much for, sharing your time and your expertise with us. I think something that we're kind of realizing is it's.
I think Jabi wants to say something.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to acknowledge Anusia for her involvement because she's put in a lot of energy and efforts to make this happen. But the real thing I wanted to log on was to recognize two super women in the Houston diversity community. Deborah from Shell, my favorite sister, Jewel Smith, because Jewel and I and Deborah and I have done a lot of diversity and inclusion work at the Diversity Summit that we have co-hosted every year with Phil Fong. And I'm very honored that the two of them have made the time to join us today. It speaks very loud about our speaker today, because for them to make the time means they have a lot of respect for both Andy and the Chamber. So I just wanted to thank the NextGen team for their effort, but to recognize Jewel and the great work they have done in the community. Thanks. I'm going to log. Good.
Thank you, Jagdeepji. I think I completely agree with that. I'm so glad we could have just so many different people show up and be here for this really important event. We really, given the events that happened these past couple of months, we really wanted to, see what we could do to start the conversation. And we're so thankful that Landy was available and just open, so open, really, so open. and sharing her feedback with all of us. And I really appreciated the conversations we've had together, Landy. I've learned so much from them too. So I just want to share my, our sincere gratitude for the time you've taken, and just we realizing that, we all have this power within us to be able to create really positive relationships that, can lead to really big things, really important things. And so I want to thank you again. And we do have one more poll. And so while that poll is going, I just wanted to share that, our NextGen team is continuing to put on more events. The Chamber is obviously doing so many events, given the current times that we live in. And, this is recorded. And so if you want to share it with people, that have these questions, this is the beauty of our technology, is that we can share those questions. And the last thing I'd say too is, thank you so much for being involved in the discussion, because, when Landy and I were talking about it, we really wanted not only just to listen and learn, but also to really internalize and see how we can, really kind of see our role in this larger conversation in the community. So with that, just would encourage you to participate in the poll. There are a couple of questions there, and share your thoughts, because we're really interested in your feedback. This is kind of the first time we're doing this style too. So with that, we'll wrap up the event, and I hope you guys have a fantastic night, and we'll continue to stay in touch and be part of this larger conversation.
Wow. Well, I can say thank you as we're wrapping up this poll here. I am not going to take it so that I won't unfairly sway any of what I will say, this is a lot of information. So what we're talking about, there are people who are in positions within companies who this is their every single day, this is what they do. Every day. I've led ERG conversations and work with affinity groups, and am very committed to being connected to how we do this as business owners, how we do this as entrepreneurs, how we do this in the tech space, how we do this in the STEM space, how we do this in oil and gas, how we do this as women. I am so connected to that, not only because of the person that I am, but when I look at habla español también, I speak Spanish fluently. And the reason why I chose to speak Spanish at a young age was, honestly, I decided that I wanted to be able to connect culturally with other people. And I tell you, it took something. People would touch my hair, people would touch my skin. This is the same as when I lived in Spain for 3 months to learn to speak it. And then I went to China some years ago, and it was the same experience. And so when I say start small, but start big, because it starts within you. That is a very big thing. When people would touch my skin, I'm a human. So I had feelings. So I had to process, how do I show up? Do I show up angry and say, don't touch me? Or do I process the fact that they've never experienced potentially someone who was open, ready, and willing to be a part of their experience? So that, if that helps to kind of consider when I'm saying think through and start small, it doesn't have to be that you change the world in a day. But I do ask you, if you say something, see something. I love what Joel said about that affirmation. It's so important. Anasuya, it has been my pleasure. NextGen, even when I was looking through my pictures, I'm like, these are my people. They don't know that I know them. These are my people, right? So we're in this together. We are in this together. And the reality is, when we talked about adversity can change everything. Adversity, if we use it correctly, we can do better. We can improve. We can make a difference. We can shift. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.